a little bit with our last budget workshop review in the budget. So we're a few minutes late, but the meeting's called to order. We have well, not a full house, but I think Lauren, if you're still there, Lauren's on the Zoom call. So we have, I believe, everybody here, unless
Lauren's not there.
Lauren's not here anymore. So we don't have Lauren. She was here for the budget.
Yeah, it's a different meeting on Zoom.
Okay.
Well, maybe she'll join me.
Maybe Lauren will join. Either way, we do have a quorum. First order of business is to accept the minutes of the March 15th regular meeting. Do I have a motion? Moved by Phil,
Second.
second by Melissa. Is there any discussion?
The only thing that I would say is that I did hear from Dave Petzel, I think regarding the bullet on the email posting service, wanting to clarify that the annual cost of the Lighthouse website is not $2,000. And so just wanted to make sure that that was clarified.
Great. Subject to that clarification. All in favor? Aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Another good job by Carrie. Carrie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
First on the agenda, we have a public hearing regarding victualers license for the Fen Cafe at the ICC. I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing. Moved by Shay. Second by Melissa. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. It is unanimous. We are in a public hearing right now about the victualers license for the Fen Cafe. Yeah, is all the paperwork in order for this?
Yes. I think Menlo is on there, probably Leo also, if you have any questions.
Hey, Menlo and Leo, would either of you like to address the select board? Anything to say?
Hi, we are excited to be here. We've put a lot of work into this cafe. We're really excited to provide this service to the community and to feed y'all. So hopefully you're into that.
Great. I'm sorry that I haven't been in yet, but I'm much looking forward to it. Is there any questions for Menlo or Leo before we comments, questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to leave the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Shay, second by Phil. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
We are out of the public hearing. I would entertain a motion to approve the victualers license for the Fen Cafe at the ICC. Moved by Melissa, second by Shay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Looking forward to seeing you guys at the cafe.
I've heard
Awesome.
so far. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Ferry service update. Oh, sorry. I guess next on the agenda is the ferry service update. I think the only news of note right now is that Mark Higgins, who has been the head of the Maine State Ferry Service, has resigned. They are actively seeking a replacement for him. And so that is something that's out there with the ferry service right now. John King, who is the island's representative on the Ferry Service Advisory Board, is coming back from being gone for the winter, and we have tentatively scheduled to meet with the DOT in Augusta to talk about a few things, primarily the new ferry design and how the town can meaningfully participate in the design process in a way that is helpful, I think, for the DOT and worthwhile for the town to think about, because I know that we both have been receiving thoughts from people in the town about what they'd like to see and concerns and questions, and I think that starting those channels or opening those channels now is a good thing before the vote is well underway to be designed. So any questions about the ferry service? Hearing none. Sea level rise, Shay.
We had the last Sea Level Rise Committee meeting last Thursday. Shri Verrill, our planning consultant, was able to attend. Right now, we're basically kind of in the orientation phase with her, so that getting her up to speed on what has been done so far. The next phase is going to be data collection and getting as much information, largely environmental, together as we can before we go through the RFP development process with the goal of reducing, making sure that we can really articulate how we want the engineers to spend their time, the questions that they want to have answered. So our next meeting is next week on Thursday at 5:30.
Any questions? Hearing none, update on municipal building project. Lauren, I see you.
I have a report.
Oh, Linda's here, so Linda, please join us.
And I'm gonna come up here because I hear very badly in this room, and maybe I'll hear better from here.
Please.
And I'm going to read this because it has a lot of numbers in it. At a special town meeting on September 22nd, 2022, Osborne voters gathered to consider a single warrant article relating to funding totaling $3,500,000 to support the municipal building project. The article comprised two parts: authorization of the issuance of up to $1,750,000 in general obligations bonds, and two, authorization to accept gifts totaling $1,750,000 from members of the private sector. The article was approved by a vote of 88 to 32. The authorization for private contributions having been approved, a 9-member campaign committee put together by the municipal building project got to work, sending out individualized letters to over 100 prospective donors and a general mailing to all members of the Islesboro community. The response was very strong, and by early January, $1,452,103 had been raised in gifts and pledges. As the chair of the campaign committee, it is my great pleasure to report that as of today, March 29th, 2023, the campaign has exceeded its goal. The total raised is $1,758,000 and 36. Gifts range in size from $25 to $300,000. There are 204 donors. 130 seasonal residents have given a total of $1,390,830, and 68 year-rounders have contributed $365,506. 6 donors, whom we have called friends, people who do not own property on Islesboro, gave a total of $1,700. The committee will announce the status of the campaign in a message sent via constant contact next week, in a municipal building project update in the March-April Osborne Island News, and on the municipal building project's website. From now on, the committee will not make any new solicitations. However, we will continue to work with several prospective donors who have received requests and prefer to consider them in the spring of 2023. In addition, in our written materials, we'll make it clear that contributions will continue to be welcome. Many thanks are in order. First of all, to the members of the campaign committee, Bruce Claflin, Marnie Heinen, John Cower, Pam Larson, Maxine Nelson, Mark Umbach, Virginia Valentine, and Bill Warren. Throughout, they have been a cheerful, generous source of support of all kinds. Secondly, to Janet and the staff of the town office. With care and efficiency, they have received, acknowledged, and documented each contribution that has come in. A very big job. And finally, to the members of the Islesboro community, seasonal and year-round. The success of the fundraising can be attributed to their understanding of the municipal building's importance and to their willingness to respond with generosity and goodwill. There we are.
Great news. Well done.
Well, you know, any big fundraising project has to start with one thing, and that is a great idea. And the municipal building project is a great idea, and you all supported it right from the outset. And so we're on our way.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Linda.
you very much.
It's always nice to have good news.
Yeah.
Lauren, is there
Thank
anything
you.
you want to add to Linda's report? You're muted if you're trying to talk.
Oh, I have all these numbers for you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I was muted. There is no way that I could follow up with anything more exciting or important than what Linda just shared. So no, I don't have anything to add at this time. I will give an update on the municipal building project at our next meeting.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports, planning board, April 10th, 5 p.m. Town manager report, Janet.
Items I've sent out to you. The agenda for tonight and then the minutes about March 15th regular meeting. Under correspondence, I had a letter from Dave Kinney to the board. Thanking the board, thanking the town for the $15,000 harbor donation. This donation assists the town of Lincolnville in its efforts to maintain the facility while accelerating the town's ability to enhance the harbor facilities for all users. We greatly appreciate this. And then just this afternoon, or excuse me, I think it was yesterday, I just printed it out today. Dave sent an email and wanting to know if there would be interest from the select board members to once again hold a joint meeting with the Lincolnville Select Board. His board would be interested. He's not sure when the Islesbury elections might be held, but we might want to wait until after June 13th, as Lincolnville may have 2 new board members this year. So he just wants to, if you want to do that, let him know and he could arrange that. I think I've given you from Ken Smith.
Worthwhile.
Outreach, and I don't know anybody with it, so.
It's been, I think, a useful thing to have those conversations in the past.
Nice.
Ken Smith handed out, this off to me, and I think I sent it to you before from January, but maybe it's a little bit different. Regarding the proposed agriculture, thank you, subcommittee. And, I don't see he's, oh yeah, Ken is on, so he may want to say something about it. But
Hey, Ken, while we're talking about, this, is there anything you want to add to the conversation about the letter that you submitted tonight to the select board?
Asking you if there's something you want to say.
Ken, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I think the letter is self-explanatory, but basically, the Harbor Committee and the Shellfish Committee would like to have a subcommittee to deal with aquaculture. And the purpose is to have something that is very transparent, a place for public input before anything is decided by the Department of Marine Resources. But it's considered to be a positive approach to something that could be very divisive within the island.
Great, dude. I'm not clear that you need authority for a subcommittee.
Okay, I found this on the web for anything is decided by the Department of Marine Resources, but it's considered to be a positive.
That was Siri talking.
I was like, I thought we were getting, Zoom bomb from somebody, but.
yeah, wait for a picture to pop.
I just realized how much Suri sounds like, Dylan Burnham. I thought they were sitting together, I was like.
So to the extent that they need authorization, anybody have thoughts about creating a subcommittee? I'm not opposed to the idea.
I'm not opposed to the idea either. I think the only, thing that feels important is I think that us creating the subcommittee will help, increase communication, which is always a good thing. I think us creating this local process doesn't necessarily change the process at DMR, for their decision-making, as I understand it, Ken, but, you know, is something that maybe is, I don't know if you're thinking that that's a criteria that the harbor master would require that this meeting be held before they sign off on the LPA application, which, you know, feels like something that is within our jurisdiction to say.
Was that a question?
Yeah, I guess is that how you're seeing this, is that the harbor master would hold off on signing the
Oh, yes.
lease application until applicants hold a meeting with this subcommittee?
Yeah, the intention is that there wouldn't be any sign-in until we've had the meeting and had a chance, both committees, to go through the whole process. It also would give people that have want to have an aquaculture farm on the island a chance to explain right up front what their intent is, and we have a chance to deal with local or foreign ownership and questions such as that.
Great, well, again, I think I'm not clear that that you need select board approval to form a subcommittee, but we're here right now, so I feel like we might as well take this up. And I would entertain a motion to approve the formation of the subcommittee as described. Moved by Phil. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I know that we moved for a motion,
I
but
know that's so,
are we creating more work? 'Cause I like the idea of it being transparent, and I like the idea of everybody having a public forum. But for a lease that, and I by no means know anything about the water rights or anything like that. So when I am wrong, please let me know. If somebody goes out and they're wanting to have a oyster spot and a spot that is not contested at all, by making them go through an additional meeting and process that the harbor master could have just previously signed off on without knowing that there wasn't any conflict, are we just creating more work for the harbor master and these committees?
No, there's no extra work for the harbor master.
But there's an additional meeting that you guys would have to attend for somebody to get that approved?
Not necessarily. There are, right now, we have 25 LPAs, and I'm sure that very few people on the island know where all of those are. The idea is to create the forum so that everybody is aware on the island of what's being asked, and there are bound to be issues in navigation. Some people, a mooring is part of navigation, to other people it's not. So those are the issues that I think that we have a chance to deal with. And people that own property right next to what is being proposed for a farm, they have a chance to, we would notify them, make sure everybody gets proper notification and not rely on the state agency to do that kind of follow-up.
But right now, it's the state agency's responsibility to handle all of that?
Well, there is, yeah. Sometimes it says that there had to be, for an example, a public hearing on a lease, requests for leases. And yet there are times that didn't happen because not enough people complained. They said, one of the letters I got was, if you need 5 or more complaints before that will justify having a hearing. So we want to make sure there is a hearing, every one of the proposals, and nothing gets unturned.
Okay, that helps, thank you. Did you have a question?
No, I mean, I guess my thinking on it is to me that this is almost an information or advice to the harbor master so that they have an opportunity to hear questions before they make their sign off on a proposal, which is part of the DMR's kind of statutory requirements. I guess I'm just, so I think, you know, that makes sense to me. I'm just hesitant to sort of formalize a process that is outside of the state's, you know, kind of very explicit sort of decision-making process, because I think, you know, I think people can communicate the issue and have a public forum. I think it's within their rights if it's the responsibility of the harbor master to sign off on it or not, to understand if it's going to go forward with the DMR process. So I think I would hate to authorize a process that with the expectation that we would leave this public hearing with 100% community consensus on every proposal. I guess that's my concern.
I will follow up Shay's comment with as described, a situation where DMR does not view the need for a hearing and that Islesboro now plans to put a hearing in place. I think we need to be very careful in terms of what we're considering, and if we're trying to create our own permitting process, which I suspect is perhaps not legal. If what we're doing is trying to do a wholesale evaluation of a permit application in a situation where DMR believes that their permitting that such a hearing is not required for whatever the reason may be. And to the extent, and my understanding, having talked to some folks about this, is there have been situations where folks were not aware of the locations of other aquaculture setups or other navigational issues that came up after permitting had been started or even perhaps completed. Again, this is not, I was not directly involved with this, but I do think that there's a good opportunity on the front end to have that conversation, to have it with the harbor masters, so the harbor master can make an informed decision about signing off on what is primarily about navigation. But to the extent that this committee is going to be providing a forum for folks to air grievances or complain about things that are otherwise foreclosed by the state process, I think that we're maybe heading in a bad direction with that. So that's the only caveat. I don't want to run afoul of the state permitting process, create something that is going to supplant and make the town an upfront decider on an application of which we don't really have the authority to decide. And not to say that we couldn't in the future. I think there's room to have that conversation with the state, but we don't have that now. And I suspect that to the extent that the town will not approve something that is not properly in the town's jurisdiction based on this, that you will see that end up in court and the town will perhaps be on the wrong side of that issue. So that's not great. Just my thoughts on the limitations of what we're talking about with this committee is information sharing to inform the harbor master's decision that he needs to make as part of the permitting process, and not providing a forum for things that otherwise would not be provided under the state's permitting application process. If that makes sense to others.
Yeah. Gabe, that makes sense to me. This is Lauren. And I wonder if, in fact, what Ken and the Harbor Committee wants to do is just make sure that the community is aware of what is going on, and maybe there's another approach that can do the same thing without having a formal hearing.
Yeah, I mean, so we certainly could have an information meeting, and I don't think there's any harm in having the community understand what's happening on and around the island, and to the extent that it creates a situation where folks are participating in the broader permitting process at the state level, that's totally fine. But to the extent where the process here is stopping a state-run permitting process, that's the concern I have. I mean, And I think that Shay said it well, just about information sharing being a good thing. And I just think we need to be careful about what we're talking about at these meetings, hearings, how we describe them, what we're talking about, and what the criteria are, and what the harbor master is looking at, right? I mean, it's just, it's walking right up to a line, and perhaps, you know, we just don't want to cross the line and step outside of what the town's authority is to participate in this process. And there's ample opportunity for folks who are in the town to participate in the application and permitting process now, right? They have an ability to, you know, file, whatever concerns they have with the state and.
Well, if they're aware of that.
Right, so
I
there's,
mean, we receive a copy and we post it in the lobby, but I don't, you know, maybe it should go out on constant contact.
right, and part of what might happen when you have a subcommittee meeting is that folks in town become aware of something they otherwise were not aware of, and they could follow the normal channels to participate in the permitting process, which is fine, totally reasonable. It's just, if the committee is holding a hearing and decides that for X, Y, and Z reason, they don't think this ought to happen, and then the harbor master withholds approval, you just might end up in a situation where the harbor master and the town don't have the authority to be doing that, and that's a sticky
What would
wicket.
happen even if the harbor master doesn't sign? I'm trying to remember that night I was listening. Does the harbor master have to?
For an LPA to move forward, my understanding is that the harbor master has to sign off on the proposal.
I think the criteria are relatively narrow in terms of what the harbor master is looking at is not a
Yes.
360-degree view of aquaculture.
Is it navigation?
Navigation, is this going to be dangerous out there in the world for the boats that are in and around the island, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's interest in, elevating the visibility of applications, you know, I think that's a great thing, whether that's sending it out on constant contact or, you know, having the harbor committee or a combination of the Shellfish and Harbor Committee hold a regular committee meeting or even, you know, a special committee meeting and invite the applicant to attend to share information. I do think the hearing language is, yeah, I think is a good articulation of where I would feel uncomfortable that we might start to find ourselves in legal challenge issues.
Yeah.
Can we ask Ken if there's a reason why he needed to use the term hearing? Because I agree with Shay that that's where you probably need to stop at that line, not use that terminology.
Yeah,
Where did he use it?
oh, there you go, okay. The, the idea is to have a public hearing allows people to, you give them a forum, and that doesn't mean it takes any particular shape, but it's allowing the public, basically Islesboro citizens, to comment, express their views, so that later on, you don't wind up with some of the situations that are going around the state where there's somebody says, I didn't know, I wasn't aware I had that right to be there. So it's one of the big thing is to avoid unnecessary conflict. And I think by setting this up, we have a lot of work to do, because already we have several new requests for LPAs, and we have more requests for leases. And if the public needs to know that if they have a full, if it's a standard lease, which means something that goes for 20 years, or if it's a scientific lease, it's going to be up to 3 years. They need to understand what people are required to do, and everybody if everybody understands what the rules are and what's being requested, then you can't say it's not ignorance. So, anyway. Not very good, Lauren, but.
So I'm with
I
you,
just want to
Ken.
add
Go
to.
ahead, Ron. Go ahead, Ron.
I just wanted to add that I think Ken is, his intentions and the Harbor Committee's intentions are really good. I'm just, thinking along the same lines that Shay is and Gabe are, is that the terminology of a public hearing is the problem. So is that necessary?
And so I don't know that, yeah, I don't think the town wants to create a forum to have a hearing on someone's permit application that the town doesn't have the authority to decide.
I
Right.
agree.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't permit those applications. We have a very small role to play. And to Ken's point, I think there's a lot to be gained for sharing information, because I know that folks have complained to me personally about aquaculture leases that they weren't aware of on the front end. And there's certainly, it doesn't hurt anybody, and it's certainly beneficial to get those concerns out on the front end so that, but really I view that not as a role for the town to then get involved in the permitting process, but just so that folks know what's happening with the permits and can participate in the already existing state permitting process. And I do think that to the extent that there is an issue with navigation that the harbor master has to decide for one of these permits, that perhaps there is room to have an open discussion about the issues that are going to affect the harbor master's decision, to make sure that the harbor master, the assistant harbor master, whoever's working on that particular project, has thought of the possibilities of, for example, I don't know where local piers are, or where people, it's hard to even know what might come up, right? Like someone goes and does urchin diving in a particular place and they're concerned about an aquaculture lease, and what that might do for how they normally go across some place that might be narrow. And again, I'm just, it's hard to know what might come up, but you might have a situation where someone would have a concern about something that directly impacted the harbor master's decision about signing off on a permit application, that is focused on what's squarely in the harbor master's authority to decide about, navigation, for example. But to the extent that turns into an open hearing on a particular aquaculture application, aquaculture generally, sometimes these conversations end up as a forum to air grievances in a situation where the town does not have any authority and perhaps shouldn't exercise any authority. And it's that part's what's concerning to me. But I certainly think that Ken is trying to address a concern that has come up, and I think that sharing information is a good idea, and perhaps open hearing on a particular application is not the best way to do it, but otherwise sharing information in some sort of organized way so that folks who are interested in knowing where aquaculture applications are applied for and can participate is totally fine, and is probably good for the town. But
Well, let's call it a forum instead of a hearing.
so I'm less concerned about calling it a forum or a hearing. I'm more concerned about the substance of what happens. And if what you have happen at this forum or hearing is folks showing up and saying, I don't think this aquaculture operation ought to go in because, well, I don't know, we have too many around Islesboro, right? Or because I don't like this person, or who knows what the conversation might be. That's outside the scope of what the harbor master should consider or decide. And I get very concerned that the harbor master might decide something based on those comments and not based on what they're required to look at for the permitting process, and what
Right.
that might mean for a potential, legal action challenging what the town has decided to do on this very small part of the permitting process. So it's not really about what it's called. Calling it a hearing is sort of concerning, but the substance of what happens there, and whether it's about what the town has authority over or not, is sort of where I'm more concerned.
I'm talking to, I have been talking to a representative from the Department of Marine Resources. she has left, left the department and gone to another agency within the state. So now I'm dealing with a different person. But the whole idea is, we would want to have a complete understanding with that representative from the department as to what we can do and what we can't do. We aren't going to do something that is beyond our jurisdiction.
Great, I think that's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, with that understanding, I think that we could put a pin in this until after you meet with them and get a firmer understanding and then come back to us.
Yeah, I think if there was some pretty well-defined scope about these are the things that we're gonna take up, and I know that when you see, for example, an appeal from a permit application or something, they have well-defined things that they're looking at, and I think if we tailored this to those things that the town has authority over, then I feel good about that. And I feel good about moving forward with a subcommittee and with having a meeting to talk about a permit. And even in the short term, I feel good about, to the extent the town receives these applications, blasting them on Constant Contact so that folks who otherwise might not be aware can become aware. And we're always gonna have the problem with folks who are not getting the Constant Contact or immediately aware, but we can only provide so much notice. We try as hard as we can to get the word out. And I think is when we're doing that, that's what the town should, can and should do, so.
Janet, do you think it'd be easier if you did it as the applications came in or just with like a once monthly update on it?
I think
I don't know.
the problem is that, public comment periods are, right, they're defined by statute, so it really
Should go out
would
once.
be based on when the application is submitted.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
And would you think the whole application, because sometimes they're fairly,
I mean, I don't know that we need the whole application. I feel
maybe
like,
the front page and say, come.
yeah, if the town has this application, heads up, if you want a copy, you can get it or come look at it at the town office. And I think that folks who are interested in that,
Because harbor masters each get one, so they're okay there.
And with LPAs, are not online, but once you enter the experimental or standard lease process, all of the applications, and comments are available on the DMR's website. So it's really, for those larger applications, it's about pointing people to the state's website because they keep that, all the materials there.
And so let's start with that, and so Ken says he's got a meeting to try to outline what the town's authority is, and let's try to dial in what this subcommittee would look at, and then we can go ahead and move forward with that, because I do think it's addressing a potential area of concern that I've heard from some residents, and I think it's good to be sort of proactive on the front end and not reactive on the back end. So thank you for being proactive like this, Ken. I think once with a little bit more direction, we'll be happy to move forward with that.
I think there's one on the bulletin board right now.
Let's blast it.
Wow, okay.
I know that there are two
I would-
experimental, there's two experimental lease sites that are currently in public comment around Islesville that actually, there might be three that I'm aware of right now.
But yeah, going forward as a matter of course, posting that on Constant Contact, so there's one more avenue that someone could learn about an application is a good thing.
And there, you can also, within that, you can sign up for DMR alert so that you get an email anytime somebody applies. For a standard and experimental, again, the LPAs are a little bit harder, but, if you make that available kind of when the blast happens, then people who want to make sure that they're paying a lot of attention can, get on those DMR notifications, and, I find I'm on those and I find it very helpful.
All right, well, Ken, thank you very much for being here tonight. Appreciate you showing up.
I have a question.
Please, Carrie.
Can this potential subcommittee meet, as a town subcommittee before it has select board approval?
If I would entertain a motion to approve formation of the subcommittee for the purpose of establishing criteria that they would look at, for these, for the limited purpose, not to hold any actual hearings, but for the limited purpose of essentially establishing what they would do going forward. So good. Anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Hearing none, Sounds like no subcommittee until we have more information about what the criteria evaluation will be, what they're gonna do and look at specifically. So at this point, there won't be a subcommittee approved by the select board.
But if they don't meet, how are they gonna drop what they?
Well, they have folks who are on the harbor committee who can go meet and talk and try to make a plan for what the subcommittee might do. I mean, we've got a harbor master, an assistant harbor master. We've got Ken, who is the former chair of the harbor committee, and Dylan, who's the chair, who are all actively involved, who could meet and talk with.
Yeah, I think John Kerr is involved too, I think, as the shellfish, from the
Yeah.
shellfish.
I mean, you got a knowledgeable group of people there who I think can come up with something. With that, thank you, Ken. Moving on. That wasn't on the agenda.
Well, it was under my handout.
Okay. Dick
I
DeGrasse,
just got.
you've been here a long time.
Are we still under town manager report?
We've moved on, I think. I've moved on.
You're done?
You've got
Sorry.
everything I was going to.
Good.
Back again to talk about municipal power.
I think they have some very good news.
Great.
It's taken a long time to get this point.
How long ago was it that we talked about this last time? 7 months. 7 months.
Fine.
I don't even have to say it. Should I say it? Okay. Two things have happened in the last week or so that brought me to this selectmen. And one is that I received a quotation from Vermont Public Power Supply Authority, which I know very well because I dealt with it for years, for a quotation for wholesale power for this island, which beats the pants with everything you can imagine. And the other thing is that the Public Utility Commission, I talked to them yesterday afternoon, they approved the idea of creating a municipal utility in some form. We don't have any assets, we won't need any assets, so that we can accept the wholesale power. And then we'll feed it through central main power as is being done today, the standard offer. I don't see any expenditure. The only expenditure I see, which is very important, is Jim Cohen, the lawyer who knows how to do this on behalf of the town. He'll create the municipality that's acceptable to the utility commission in Augusta, so that they can give us a license to buy wholesale power. The problem with the state of Maine is when they separated the utilities out and spun off the generation, they left us with a big vacuum. And so we're paying retail power twice in the state of Maine. Our power costs here are at least 5 or 6 cents a kilowatt hour more than they are anywhere else in New England, because of the way they structured the utilities in the state in the year 2000, when they separated the generation from the distribution. And that's why Central Maine Power is only a delivery company, a distribution company, and not a generation company. The generation company comes in as standard offer at retail prices. My job has been to see if I can beat that retail price in the last several months, and we've done it. Vermont Public Power Supply Authority only serves municipalities. They created them in Vermont so that the municipalities who own the distribution system, I'm talking poles and wires and stuff like that, they couldn't buy power on their own. They could, but it was too complicated. Because, for example, Vermont Public Power Supply has 10 sources of power right now. Hydro-Quebec, Niagara, Mohawk, some solar power. They're even buying wind power from Idaho and Fox Island. So they're active in the state of Maine. But this will be the first time that a municipal utility has bought wholesale power at the rate that I've been quoted, which I gave you a quotation from Tom, from the Vermont Public Power. Well, and the savings are huge for the people in this town. And I sent a copy, I think, of my calculations based on my last electric bill. The Public Power Supply Authority would come in, for example, for the same electric bill for my house. They come in at $76.71, and the total February, March bill with the standard offer is $114.43. A big difference in the price of electricity for the average consumer. And if you stretch that out, and I think our second page, I showed a graph of the power supply and power usage on the island. And if you use the average power consumption for a given month, in the summertime, for example, doesn't really make a difference which month, 500,000 kilowatt hours, the savings of $47,000 a month. And that's why I'm here. We need to set up a municipality that can buy wholesale power. And it's just basically a legal entity to be done for the Maine Public Utility Commission. I talked to them yesterday afternoon. I told them that I was meeting with you people today, and that I needed an answer on whether or not, if we establish a municipal entity to buy power, can we buy wholesale power from Vermont? And the answer came back yesterday afternoon, yes, you can get you need a license. Islesboro. And so that's, right now, I'm anxious to have this town, if possible, employ Jim Cohen, who's the best lawyer in the state with regard to this sort of thing, setting a municipality to purchase power. And he's acceptable to the Utility Commission in Augusta. So my request would be to pay his legal fee, which he said, and I give you a quote, I have it here, between $2,000 and $5,000 for legal fee to set up a municipality to buy power, wholesale power.
So this is,
Go ahead.
this is setting up some entity,
Yes,
right? And do we still need to get a license from the Public Utility Commission?
yes, yes, they would issue a license to the municipality, the entity we create.
And that's part of the $2,000 to $5,000?
Yes, that's included in that.
Is that an annual renewal? Is that a?
No, I don't believe it's an annual. I think it's a one-time shot for Steve Cohen to set this up.
And
It's
so-
illegal, he has to review the legal entity, and it's too complicated for me to fiddle with. It's a chapter 305. I got the material in my bag here, but it's this thick. And I don't want to deal with that. I'm a technician and I want to bring cheap power into the town
And
as
so
best I can.
help me understand the nuts and bolts of how this works. The town buys power. They buy X amount of power.
We buy the ability for them to serve us. We don't know exactly how much power we're gonna need, but we know roughly,
Right.
we're gonna need about 1.5 megawatts. I know roughly what we're gonna need. And there's enough there so we can charge ferry batteries down the road. I looked into that, and they are willing to sell off-peak power to the extent we need it to charge a ferry battery in the future. I know it's in the future, but I need to know that we can do that. I know we did it in Vermont for all kinds of stuff. We did it for heating, home heating, we did it for snowmaking, we did all kinds of off-peak stuff, which I was partly responsible for. But I wanted to be sure we had enough power coming into the island to take care of a ferry in the future, and we will. So that's, basically, we end up as a middleman, but we're not taking any commission or anything like that. We're just allowing Vermont Public Power to be on the table with Central Maine Power. They feed their power through to us. They deliver the power from Vermont. All that price that I have from Vermont Public Power includes the wheeling charge, which is the price to take power from Hydro-Quebec, for example, and wheel it to Maine. The price includes that. So all of that is taken into account. And there's a lot of questions that I'm not sure I can answer them all in one minute.
I feel like the question that came to my mind the last time we started this conversation, well, first, I'll say that generally speaking, I support getting cheaper power to the island.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, that's like, it's a no-brainer. And I am perhaps more risk tolerant in this sphere than others. I think it's sort of an intriguing idea. The question I have is, it seems like every town should do this. I don't understand why, and I get that maybe some town has to do it first. Has any town, does any town do this?
That's a big consideration, Gabe. The reason it's happening in Islesboro is because I have the experience of about 20 years doing this in Vermont. and in Hydro-Quebec and with Niagara Mohawk to try to bring cheap power into Vermont, and I was successful at that. And I said, I don't know what the rest of the municipalities in Maine are gonna do, but I suspect it's gonna be a big issue to try to get municipalities to buy wholesale power from some source. And it could be New Brunswick for all I know.
I suspect that if these numbers are real, if what we're talking about is a real thing that happens and can happen, that every municipality will do it.
They could, I
Why
suppose.
wouldn't-
I don't know. Some may have some legal problems. I don't know what they are, but.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean. That you designate to it is also part of your challenges for a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, you know, Idaho and, Monhegan and Vinyl Haven all have their own kind of municipal energy
Right.
entities. I believe that they all own some of their island grid infrastructure,
That's
which
right.
is kind of what brings them to the table. I'm wondering if there are, any other municipal energy,
There are.
companies that do not hold infrastructure.
To my knowledge, there are not, but there are municipalities in this state, of course, that do own infrastructure. Madison Electric, for example, they own the distribution system. We don't. Central Maine Power does. I'm not sure that's bad at all. I mean, it's probably the costs are very comparable between the cost of distributing power in Madison as it is here. I don't think there's much difference. Trucks and poles and wires and so on are different from one town to another, but there's not a huge difference.
Would part of the creation of the entity require negotiation with CMP, as owners of the infrastructure?
But it would be none of that. I have already talked to CMP and said, can you guys handle Vermont Public Power? And the answer is yes. It's a paper transaction.
Do we have any kind of guarantee of what they charge for their distribution rates? Is
Yes, we have.
is it a guaranteed flat rate?
From
Or,
CMP?
yeah,
That's
My-
controlled by the Utility Commission, and I know what the current costs are, of course.
right. I just wanted to make sure that if we do this, like if the CMP delivery rate is the 0.10, right?
Right.
That's not the rate from CMP Power through CMP Delivery, and that if we went Vermont Power through CMP Delivery, that they would
Two
jack it up.
entirely separate activities.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make
Totally
sure of,
separate.
is because you
Yeah,
always have the
in fact,
CMP guys
that's-
that are a little dicey.
Central Maine Power really doesn't care who supplies the power coming to the island, for example. They don't really care.
'Cause
They
make
just
the money off
process
the
it. They
distribution.
bill it, process it, and that's it. So if we're able to get wholesale power, which we have quoted now, if I can bring that into this, Central Maine Power, they'll service that.
And someone could still decide they do not want to buy power from the Islesboro created municipal utility company.
Well,
And they could continue to buy from the standard offer from CMP if they want.
They can't make that choice. Central Maine Power buys from whomever if we're authorized with it as a municipality to buy wholesale power, they have an obligation to deliver it.
No, I mean, could
As
a
the
resident
individual.
here, let's say at my house, I say, I don't like Vermont power, I
Okay.
wanna buy the standard offer from
And you can
CMP.
do that. I had that discussion with the PUC yesterday.
Okay.
They said, well, what happens if I'd love to have everyone on the island do it because everybody saves money.
But they
And
can't
somebody
separate it.
don't have to, you don't have to.
They can't separate him as a single customer.
Yeah, they do. They separate by the meter.
Oh, they
Yeah,
do.
you can-
Every
you
meter
get
has
all
its
those-
own,
you
has
get
its own
letters.
So
supply.
where's the power coming from that goes
Right
through the
right
meter?
now,
Where's the power coming from that goes through the meter?
It's
Isn't it
right-
in the standard system?
it's coming from New Brunswick and Next Era Energy. New Brunswick serves this state, and about 63% of the power here is New Brunswick. And the rest is Next Era and maybe a couple of small producers, very small. That's the current, what you're paying right now. That's the current supply, and that's coming through the standard offer. And there are other companies trying to make hay in here, as you probably get postcards every once in a while from suppliers.
Yeah.
They're trying to ride in on the fact that we're paying retail prices for supply when we should not be. If we structure it through a wholesale purchasing arrangement. And I've got a card here that I got yesterday from a company that wants to sell us power, and they want 13 something cents a kilowatt hour, when we can get it for 8.2 from Vermont. Big difference.
So forming the municipality gives you the opportunity, or what's his name, Steve Cohen?
Steve,
To apply for something, a license with the
Yeah,
utility commission?
yeah, he wants to be sure, that Vermont Public Power wants to be certain that we have a legal entity to be able to buy wholesale power.
Okay.
And that's what you need, that's why you need an attorney like Jim Cohen. I don't know the man, but I got his proposal here. And I know he's recognized by the Utility Commission in Augusta as being the #1 guy in the state to put this together. But that's where we are.
Do we have a minimum enrollment rate, basically, before Vermont Public Power would negotiate with us?
The wholesale power negotiations are totally different than retail. Wholesale, a company has to commit their generation plant for a particular length of time. The quotation that I have from Vepser is this current year, 1923, 2023 on through to 24. So I doubt seriously they'd be changing prices. Retail is a different story. So I don't want to deal with retail because that's what's hurting the rates and
How does
costing
this-
more we need to spend.
If they're designating part of their power plant for us, right, how do they handle if, for example, half of the town signs up and doesn't use the power and they have to designate?
They just supply whoever signs up. It's as simple as that. If the whole town signs up, which would be a good thing, I think, for everybody. But if only half the town signs up, for example, and wants to bother with it, then it's a
So there's no required quantity.
So who signs the town up? Is there a town official who has to sign people up for our municipal?
Well, I think we make an announcement and say, this is what we propose to do, we being the municipality, says this is what we propose to do, and these are the rates. If you have an objection, then that's fine, you stand the standard offer.
No, I think
We
he's
have
asking,
to make a public announcement.
right, but how would we switch everyone? Like,
We
does
don't-
Carrie need to call herself?
Yeah,
And
We'd have to
sign
know the
herself
people
up?
and we tell Central Maine Power and Vepsa who these people are.
I
Now,
have a
suspect that
suggestion.
everybody would sign up. No, nobody, this is that one.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I have yes, it seems like this is a really interesting idea and worth looking more into. I'm not sure we can solve or come up with all of the questions and all of the answers tonight. And this is certainly not something I'm able to do, but should we have assign someone to look into this, or should we have a workshop on this at some point in the future to get more information? I think Dick has worked very, very hard to line all of this up, and he's brought us to a very, very good point. But I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision tonight. So that's my recommendation.
I think that at the very least, we need to call the town's attorney and understand their position on this generally, understanding, in my experience, the town's attorneys, they can be very risk averse, which is, I think, a reasonable place to be. At least understanding what their thoughts are, and then understanding whether the town ought to have a town-wide vote on this type of creation.
That's what, yeah, well, they would know, right? That was my question.
Right, so I'm not clear that the select board can create the entity without town approval. But we want to know that.
People aren't obligated to do this. They're not mandated to.
But I feel like it's in some ways the same as the Economic Sustainability Corporation, where there was a lot of discussion in public hearings about forming that entity. And yeah, it is complicated enough that I think identifying the process to get the questions vetted, get answers back before, I mean, it seems like a big enough step that it does feel like a solid public process is
Yeah.
important.
Well, it's a strange combination of perhaps a minimal capital outlay for something that has a huge benefit, but yet is a very important and all-encompassing thing in people's lives, right? That power, people need power, and like, it's $2,000 to $5,000 to get that much savings is very small, and it's
That's why I'm here. So you gotta start somewhere.
Well, Cohen's done this many times, hasn't he?
What's that?
Cohen, he's done
Yes,
this many
yes,
times.
that's why, I
so
don't know the town attorney, and I don't wanna presume to select that, except this particular individual, I know enough,
what
But
law
he's-
firm does this
he
person
knows how
work
to
for?
do it.
What law firm does this person work for?
He works for a company called Beryl,
Oh, Beryl Dana.
yeah.
Okay.
It would be nice to know what towns he's done. Did you say he has or hasn't done any
I have
towns?
not asked him that question.
Okay.
And he, because I don't.
But he is an
no other-
energy lawyer.
You made it sound like, do you have a proposal from Jim
Yeah,
to consider?
I do, yeah, I have not given it to you because I thought we had a lot of ground to cover before we get to that point.
I just, you know,
The one thing that I will say about the
I'm
town,
prepared to throw caution to the wind.
the one thing I will say about having it under a
It's a-
town
it's a
meeting is I think
complicated
that
issue.
also provides the townspeople with a sense of buy-in to it.
Yeah.
You know, if you get it out there and you have the presentations and you have the meetings and you allow them to make the vote on whether or not this does or does not go forward, then you already have the backing, and it also works as a public forum, you know, for them to learn more. You're gonna have to put out a lot of work before April.
And I think, yeah, realistically, best case scenario, I think as well, who knows what best case, scenario, but there, it seems like a realistic path forward is understanding what the town's attorneys thinks we need to do, and then trying to have something ready for the upcoming town meeting. Depending on what we need to have, it's like, do we need to have a town-wide vote? Do we need to have
All of that stuff.
information and discussion there? Because I suspect if we're thinking about moving forward, we might want to have somebody who is knowledgeable about this, like this attorney should show up at the town meeting and participate and answer questions, but this is, we're a long way away from that now, but that's coming right up in.
But I'll be, if you
You wanna
wish,
push it back?
I know, no, I'm not pushing it back.
Can this happen by May, what is it, 13th, 14th?
I'd be happy to talk with the town attorney if that's of any help to you guys,
Well, let's see, I think the first step, is probably Janet, or I can draft an email, we can poke Sally Daggett and just say, hey, this is the conversation that we're having. And what do you think? And is this a town approval vote or?
And
I'm
what
sure the
this
town's
proposal
attorney
is, that this attorney has.
Yeah,
I have the proposal here, I'd be happy to copy it and give it to.
Yeah,
everybody.
if you
I
could
think
get
that we
it,
should send it
get Janet to email it around to us, I'd love to take a look at that.
Yeah, I can scan it in and,
And make sure you have all of them here. I think this is the whole thing. I might add that, there's somebody else in this island that knows something about this stuff, and it's Larry Hobart. Do people know who he is?
yeah.
Larry Hobart was the head of the United States Public Power Authority in Washington. And I knew him when I was running a utility in Vermont and was part of VEPSA. And Larry gave me a list of the VEPSA's power suppliers. That's why I happen to have it. So there's a lot, most towns don't go through this because it's already been going on for 40 years. You know, they don't do it. All of a sudden, we're faced with an opportunity. And a lot of questions come up with, is this a scam? You know,
Well, yeah, exactly, those are the,
Of course.
the too good to be true
It's too
thing
good to be true.
is the thing that crosses my.
I didn't know whether I should throw my hat in first or what.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Dick, this email is from last August.
That's right.
Have you talked to him recently?
Yes,
Is
I
this
talked
still-
to him a few days ago. I don't remember exactly when.
And that's still the current
Maybe
proposal.
we can get some new ones.
I mean,
I
curious to see
didn't
what he's
do
getting
anything
at. I
last
think we're-
August because I didn't
Got
have a quote.
a little bit of legwork before we jump on that, so I think that getting that old proposal is fine for right now. There's no-
Okay. This is more of it, I think. Yeah, this is more. This is from the first. I did not act on it last year because I did not have a competitive wholesale price for power. It's silly to set up a municipality if I can't beat that. That was so I was able to beat it last week. That's why I'm here.
Great.
So I'm gonna have to ask you to put this in the correct order. I mean, it's a bunch of different dates, a bunch of different emails.
Well, I think we can get the opinion of the town attorney and
Yeah, I don't know who he is or she.
Sally Daggett
Several.
primarily, yeah, who we talked to, but they may have a person who works particularly with this type of issue, who knows? And perhaps I suspect they don't have a person who works with this because it's not quite a thing at this point.
How long is the rate fixed for? Dick,
Sorry,
how long is the rate set for? A year,
A year.
6 months,
23.
all of
This year,
23?
yeah.
And then you renegotiate again in
Yeah,
24?
they may, but they have to go through the utility commission just as we do here for any, in Maine. In other words, the Vermont Public Service Board controls the rates for REPSA. So there's two, government entities involved before we see the power. And one of them is Vermont, which I served on for several years. And the other one is Maine. So it's, it's not as though this is some fly-by-night operation. At least I don't believe it at this point.
So is everybody happy with that step forward of checking with the town's attorney about, general thoughts on this as well as the approval process and whether that's a town vote kind of thing, or whether it's a select board approval kind of thing? I mean, and also the other side of that is we may want
That's all I need.
some money aside in the year's budget to pay for such an entity formation. If that's the route that we're going, so just a thought for budgeting.
And you send me a little brief memo or something?
This is for Sally?
Yes,
Yeah.
or to whomever, it could be
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I'll make a note to myself. I'll try to follow up with you on that tomorrow.
Can we do it? Should we do it? Does the town have to tell us to do it?
Done.
We have a joke of, why use so many words when few words too much?
Especially if you're paying an attorney. There's a lot of reading there.
I'd just like to jump in and thank Dick for all the work he's done on this.
Yeah, I was almost a year-long process of a novel, a novel thing. It's fun for me. I like this very much.
We could make history in the state of Maine.
Well, it just feels like, I mean, it feels like it has that possibility, and when, I do get a lot of those cards in the mail about like, oh, buy power from us and you'll save money, right? And it does seem like, it's not impossible that this is all like a reality. It's not impossible.
You wouldn't be the one to put the card in the mail.
I don't wanna get the card, I wanna send them out.
I'll go do it.
That's right.
I know.
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
It's been a long, right, so we'll proceed with that, and if you could get us that proposal even from last year, I'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah, she's got it.
Great.
What was the
Yeah, I-
request? I think I lost. What did you ask, Gabe?
Oh, the proposal, which I guess you already gave to Jan, and we'll follow up with you when we know more information from the attorney.
That's just, well, that's information on the attorney. All right,
Can you send that to all of us?
gladly.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Dick, very much.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
I think, I don't know where we're going with this, but I hope we get this thing. accomplished by the time
I hope so too, I hope
Town
it's a
meeting.
real thing. I'll sign up.
We make discussion for town meeting.
It'd be really good.
If we could have a discussion at town meeting and be prepared, that'd be like, everything, the stars aligning.
The town budget is going down and your electricity prices are.
It's like we're like used car salesmen.
They won't let Gabe leave.
Right, we have to keep it.
What's it gonna take to get you into this power purchase agreement today?
1 for a year for Dave.
Thanks.
Okay, we're all getting a little slap back.
It's been a long, we don't usually have meetings this long,
Yeah.
I'll accept responsibility for that. We've done with that, I'll throw looking ahead, sorry, I'm not prepared for that one, it's gonna have to wait again, sorry guys.
I just wrote no on it.
Can I just make a suggestion on that? I mean, I feel like it's a really good document and it has lots of things, but I feel like since its inception, it has just like expanded a little bit every time to the point where I feel like now it feels a little bit daunting.
Yes.
And I guess I would just encourage us to figure out how to streamline it again so that, you know, it doesn't have to be both a celebration of everything that we've done and defining our priorities. I think we need to refine it. We need to shorten it again.
I mean, use an outline.
Yeah.
Point
A one-page
taken.
outline.
Point taken. With that, I'd
Not
entertain
a
a
10-page
motion.
manifesto.
I'd entertain a motion to approve warrant number 20 for year 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Melissa, second by Shay. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Warrants approved. We have, an appointment. What is this, an appointment? What is it?
Yes, an appointment for Bill Thomas to join the Lighthouse Museum Committee. Dave Petzel. I guess, no, excuse me, I wrote a note there. Who's he replacing? Gloxel?
Yeah. Replacing Jeff Waffle.
If I say no, does Jeff have to stay?
No.
Yes. No, Jeff doesn't have to stay, unfortunately. I would entertain a motion to, appoint Bill Thomas to the Lighthouse / Museum Committee.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Phil, second by Melissa, all in favor?
Aye.
Bill Thomas is approved. Thank you for your service. Bill
Thank you,
Thomas.
Yeah.
Makes me folks want to be involved. We do have an executive session tonight. I don't have any chair comments. Vice chair comment, Jay,
I'm good.
Melissa.
Junior class dinner, April 11th. Please come.
Bill, comments?
Okay.
No comments. Lauren, comments from afar.
Weather's beautiful here. I hope it is there as well.
When do you come back?
I'll be on the island on April 11th.
Okay, we miss you.
Great.
I look forward to
Was it-
seeing you all.
With that, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session. Moved by Melissa, second by Phil. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Right, so now I guess Carrie is done and we have to shut off. I don't think we can
No.
leave the Zoom on.
No, I think you have to kick her off.